Welcome back to the deep dive. Whenever I think about human evolution, I kind of just picture those cavemen from the textbooks, the ones with clubs and loincloths. But what if we're not just looking at the past? What if there's a whole new chapter of human evolution right around the corner, like something totally unexpected?
It's a question a lot of people are asking these days. And it sounds like you've been doing some exploring yourself, been checking out any YouTube videos about where humans might be headed in the future. Are we still even evolving?
Totally. But it's a bit like, are we talking humans with superpowers or just like evolving to actually crave vegetables? It's a lot to think about.
It really is. And the best part is, we don't have all the answers. But we can find some pretty wild clues if we look at the latest research.
Okay, so where do we start? Should we dig out our Darwin?
Haha, a little Darwin never hurts. But for this deep dive, why don't we skip ahead? We could do a quick recap of the highlights of like millions of years of evolution and then get to the really exciting stuff. Research that suggests the future of humans could be wilder than we could even imagine.
Okay, yeah, I'm into that. Fast forward through all those years. Ready, set, go.
All right, so picture this. About 7 million years ago, our ancestors and the ancestors of chimps. Yeah, they went their separate ways. It's a pretty big moment in our evolutionary story. And then fast forward through, well, a really long time, and bam, Homo sapiens shows up. That's us, by the way, around 200,000 to 300,000 years ago.
200,000 years. I mean, that feels like both a really long time and like a blink of an eye when you think about the bigger picture.
Yeah, you're right. And think about this. In that, relatively short time, humans have gone from those early humans to, well, a species that's changing the entire planet.
Yeah, and it makes you think maybe we're not just a result of evolution. Maybe we're actually a force that's shaping how it unfolds, right?
Exactly. Which brings up something I bet you've come across in your research, that whole idea that, well, human evolution is over and done with. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, to be honest, I did watch a couple of videos that were saying modern life has basically put evolution on hold. But like, something tells me it can't be that simple, right?
You're right to question that.
Yeah.
Evolution, it never really stops. It's a constant process. What does change is what drives it, what we call selection pressures.
Right, selection pressure. So like it's almost like some kind of cosmic obstacle course and species have got to adapt or die. Is that kind of the idea?
You nailed it. So in the past, those pressures might have been like predators, not enough food, or even the climate being too extreme. But now we're dealing with things like, processed food everywhere, sitting all day long, and just this constant flood of information. It's like a whole new set of challenges on the human evolution obstacle course,
Yeah. So no more saber-toothed tigers to outrun, but now maybe we're evolving to survive like a different kind of jungle, right? Like the concrete jungle of cities and stuff.
Exactly. And that's where things start to get really interesting because our bodies are still adapting, just in ways that are harder to spot.
Like how we can survive on just coffee and like takeout.
Haha. Well, maybe not that. But your research did mention some pretty wild adaptations, like the whole lactose tolerance thing.
Oh, yeah. I read that, like, for most of human history, adults couldn't even drink milk.
Right. Being able to handle lactose, the sugar in milk after infancy, is something that happened pretty recently, and it's totally tied to humans starting to farm cows and stuff.
Oh, right. So when people started herding animals and drinking their milk, the ones who could handle it actually, like, had a better shot at surviving, having kids, passing on their lactose-loving genes.
Exactly. And that right there is evolution in action.
Wow. I never thought a glass of milk could tell such a story about, human adaptation.
It really is pretty amazing. And it gets even more interesting when you realize how different this adaptation is in different groups of people. Like you mentioned, you've got some Scandinavian in you, right?
Yeah. Yeah. My grandparents were actually from Norway.
So there's a good chance you've got this specific gene variant that lets you digest milk as an adult. It's way more common in people whose ancestors were big on dairy farming, like in Northern Europe.
Oh, wow. So you're saying my love of cheese is like literally in my genes?
In a way, yeah. It just shows how these evolutionary stories aren't just like abstract things. They're part of our DNA, part of who we are.
That's wild. Okay, so we've got cheese preferences maybe being genetic and evolution still happening. But what about those videos talking about humans growing a third artery in their arm? That sounds like something out of a movie.
It does sound kind of sci-fi, doesn't it? But it's based on real research, believe it or not. Remember those subtle adaptations we were talking about? This extra artery? It's called the median artery, and it's a perfect example. Like, it used to be pretty rare.
So not like we're all suddenly sprouting extra arms or anything.
No, not quite. It's a blood vessel that's always been part of Well, how our bodies develop. You see, in the womb, this artery supplies blood to, the hands as they're forming. But then, usually, it disappears before birth.
Okay, so instead of fading away, it's sticking around. But what does that even mean? Why does it matter?
That's the big question, right? Some researchers think it could be because we're using our hands and arms way more these days. Think about it. Typing, texting, gaming, all that stuff, it takes a lot of really fine motor skills, and having that extra artery could mean more blood flow to those muscles and tendons.
Oh, so our love for our smartphones is like rewiring our anatomy. That's kind of freaky, but also really cool.
It really shows how our environment and our genes are kind of like in this constant dance.
Yeah.
But hey, are you ready to jump into something even crazier? Let's talk about tech. Like, what if tech itself becomes the driving force behind a whole new species of human? And I'm not just talking adapting to tech, but like merging with it.
Now we're getting to the really good stuff. Designer babies and uploading our brains into computers, right? This is where it starts to feel like we're living in the future.
It might feel like sci-fi, but it's getting closer all the time. Take designer babies, for example. We're not there yet, but tech like CRISPR is giving us the ability to like edit genes with crazy accuracy.
CRISPR, I've definitely heard of it, but what is it exactly? Like molecular scissors for our DNA or something?
That's actually a pretty good way to put it. CRISPR lets scientists zero in on a specific gene, snip out the parts they don't want, and even stick new parts in. It has the potential to, totally change how we treat genetic diseases. Imagine just erasing them.
That's incredible, but I can definitely see some ethical questions there too. What if people start using this not just for diseases, but to like choose what their kids look like or how tall they are?
Exactly. Huge benefits, but huge things to consider, right?
Right.
Like who gets to decide what makes a trait good or whatever? And could it create a world where only the rich can afford to, upgrade their kids? That'll only make inequality worse.
It's like opening a can of worms, for sure. And it's not just about designer babies, is it? Going down the YouTube rabbit hole also led me to digital consciousness, like uploading your mind and stuff. That just seems wild.
Oh, absolutely. It's one of those things that just like breaks your brain a little. It's the idea that someday we might be able to basically make a digital copy of a person's brain with everything that makes them, and then like transfer it into a computer or maybe even a synthetic body.
So instead of our bodies evolving, it's our consciousness, living in a digital world.
Right. Think about it. A world where dying is just like a software bug, where you can just back up your mind and basically live forever, digitally at least.
Oh, yeah.
It makes you question everything we think we know about, well, life, death, and what it even means to be human.
It's definitely both exciting and kind of terrifying. Would we even be the same species anymore?
Big questions, right? And philosophers and scientists are trying to figure that out right now. Would a digital copy of you actually be you, with your memories, your personality, your sense of self, or would it be something totally different?
It really makes you wonder, where does evolution go from here?
Right.
Like, are we talking about humans with, I don't know, enhanced abilities because of gene editing? Or, like you said, digital consciousness hanging out in some virtual world? It's almost too much to think about.
Yeah, it kind of stretches the imagination, doesn't it? And honestly, we're just starting to grasp what all of this could mean.
Okay, so big picture time. We started out wondering, could we be seeing the start of a whole new human species? With everything we've talked about, all these changes, could it really happen?
That's the million-dollar question, right? And it's one that people have been asking for a long, long time. There's no easy answer. But here's the thing. Evolution never stops. It's constantly changing and adapting, right? Whether it's through natural selection or, like we were just talking about, all the crazy advancements in tech. The story of humans, it's still being written.
That's kind of humbling, but also a little scary. To think we're part of something so much bigger, something that could go anywhere, you know?
It definitely makes you stop and think. And it forces us to ask some really deep questions, like what does it mean to be human? What do we value about ourselves as we are right now? And how far is too far when it comes to, I don't know, trying to improve ourselves with technology?
Yeah, it's like we're standing at a crossroads, and the map only shows a couple steps ahead. But even without knowing the final destination, it's pretty amazing to be on the journey, you know?
Couldn't have said it better myself. And that, I think, really sums up our deep dive today. We've gone from millions of years of evolution to the subtle ways our bodies are changing right now, and then all the way to mind-blowing stuff like designer babies and digital consciousness.
And through all of it, we see this one powerful force, evolution. It's shaping us, even now, in ways we're just beginning to understand.
Exactly. And that leaves us with something to think about. If you could look into the future, would you want to see what becomes of humanity? Or would you rather just enjoy the mystery of not knowing what's next?
That's a tough one. It's definitely something to ponder. This whole deep dive has been amazing. Thanks so much for being our guide.
Yay, the pleasure was all mine. Keep asking those big questions and never stop exploring the world, all right? Until next time.